Thank you for that nice introduction before as well. And I also wanted just to tell you a little bit about my backgrounds. I actually worked for 10 years in New Zealand, working in town centres and business precincts, and achieved quite a lot of success with increased occupancy levels, increased pedestrian traffic. So I also managed the Auckland City's Business Improvement District program before, this is pre-amalgamation, before they became the super city, and that encompassed 16 town centre areas and one business industrial estate, and we managed a budget of 6.6 million. And I've been with the City of Sydney for the last 5 years. 3 of those years I worked in business precincts as a coordinator, and for the last 2 I've actually managed the program, which now includes the finegrain and laneways and small bars program as well, which makes it much more interesting. My role with the city is primarily threefold, and building the capacity of small business, and Richard's my primary person in charge of those initiatives. We also run grants and sponsorships programs, and they are mainly targeted to local business chambers to help them develop economic development initiatives. But we also run a marketing and promotional program as well, where we promote the city's villages and also small bars and laneways. And we're currently working on a fantastic new little booklet called The Little Book of Sydney's Villages, which hopefully will be out by Christmas. So layering the fine grain, and what does that actually mean? For me, it's about ways that communities are actually collaborating to build fabric and add texture to a place. Now, we heard from Richard, and he talked about the changing conversation. People are talking about Sydney now in a different way. They're talking about the small bars, and I can tell you that the small bars have been the catalyst for a massive number of new tour operators. They've been the catalyst for other things as well. But layering the fine grain, I'm actually going to talk primarily on the city's villages. And we're talking about storytelling to illustrate the character of a place or change a conversation about a place. And also a strong point on the cooperation of local businesses, the collaboration, because together we are stronger than by ourselves. And also businesses are now starting to think about places in a different way, not just for consumers, but as places to live, because people are investing their lives in these places and they want to share in the value of these places. And in Sydney, I live in Surrey Hills, and I can tell you that on the weekends, everybody actually gravitates to Crown Street, and it's absolutely simply pumping on the weekends, and the cafes have actually got 20 deep people waiting for a table. I really, really love this quote. It's from Julian Dobson. He's from Urban Pollinators in the UK. He said, "Successful high streets and town centres that are fit for the 21st century need to be multifunctional social centres and not just competitors for stretched consumers." I think he sums up how I feel about our city's program. I'm actually going to give you some examples now about, I'm going to illustrate how village business communities are influencing their local surrounds. I'm going to kick off with the William Street Laneway Festival. Now, this festival started 6 years ago. There was a group of businesses who actually, small bespoke businesses, it was quite an interesting little laneway off Oxford Street. They set up their businesses in very cool, architecturally little I'm not sure what you call them in Australia, but terrace houses. Yep, and it was a really interesting, a very interesting mix of businesses started to develop, and they got together and they wanted to actually work out a way to promote and showcase what their little street had to offer. So they wanted to tell their story. They decided they'd do that via a festival. They closed the street, and they wanted to come up with something that people would remember them for. And they used all their local traders. They used the opportunity to actually put tables and chairs out on the street, and also they brought in food trucks and a whole pile of additional local operators as well. And the first year they had 4,000 people there, and this year they're expecting over 10,000 people. It's quite a success story. And what is really good about it, it's a good example of cooperation and collaboration with purpose. And it's changed the conversation about that laneway and helped them to increase business. And now the annual festival, as I said, attracts 10,000 people. And the next festival's on the 11th of October. The King's Cross Festival is a really good example as well of people who are collaborating to change conversation. Now, you all probably remember the sad news about Thomas Kelly. And so the business community got together. They knew they needed to tell a different story about King's Cross because it had become like party central, and the only reason people were starting to remember King's Cross was because of the violence on the weekends and the drunken behaviour. So, but yet King's Cross is in Potts Point, which is quite an affluent area, and so there are these it's quite an interesting mix of businesses and daytime and nighttime economy as well. So they actually brought in Terry Durack and Jill Duplay from the Sydney Morning Herald, and together with the local businesses, they designed a 5-day festival. And they focused on food, culture and art. And the first festival was absolutely a roaring success. 20 restaurants took part over the 5-day period and offered specials to diners. But the major highlight was a concert in Fitzroy Gardens with Renee Gayer, and that brought in 25,000 people. And it was absolutely jam-packed. King's Cross was jam-packed, you couldn't move. And so over the 5 days, 30,000 people came into King's Cross for that one festival. And it's happening again this year, and it's on the 10th and 12th of October. And 10th to the 12th of October, and it's going to be quite phenomenal because this year they're actually closing off the street, they're putting a long table down the street, they're actually pulling in 2 stages for live music as well. That photograph there is actually of Langkelly Place, which is a success story in its own right. It's a little laneway in King's Cross, and councils invested quite a bit of money in upgrading the area, and also these lights actually used to be there years ago, but for some reason they weren't working anymore, so council actually restored them to working order, and the laneway in the last year has actually just come to life, and businesses that were dying are now flourishing. Another really good example of business collaboration is the Pyrmont Festival of Food, Wine and Art. And it was their local business chamber that highlighted the need to actually change the conversation about Pyrmont, because Pyrmont had the reputation of being one of the worst suburbs in Sydney. It came from, it's had a background it had quite an industrial past, but it also had an unsavoury reputation. But it's very close to the CBD, and there'd been a change in the the number of businesses who were starting to locate there. So Google, Nokia, Channel 7, Channel 10, quite a lot of the radio stations were actually coming into the area. So it started to become quite a tech media hub. And along with that, quite a lot of upmarket restaurants were moving into the area. So they decided that they needed to run a festival to actually celebrate the character of their place and the changing character of their place. And they got 20 local restaurants take part in the festival over 10 days. And they've teamed up with Mudgee winemakers, and they do quite a range of events now, from long lunches to long breakfasts to, and they also, 2 days of that 10 days is actually a festival in Pirima Park. And this last year, they had 20,000 people come into Pyrmont over that period, over that 10-day period. And it's changed how people perceive Pyrmont now. Nobody knew about the fantastic restaurants in the area, and now they do. And the interesting thing is that it's bringing in more upmarket restaurants as well. And tagging on to the Pyrmont Festival, a local group saw how successful the Pyrmont Festival was, a local community group, and so they came up with the idea to run their own little mini one-day market day. And it was quite amazing. They got a $10,000 grant from the City of Sydney, but they actually funded it primarily with donations. And the only additional funding they got really was from stall holders, and they allowed 30 stall holders to set up, and they brought in the City of Sydney's food truck program, and it was a major success. 10,000 people attended this little festival, this little market day. It was amazing. The Glebe Street Fair is another amazing success story. 31 years ago, a group of business people actually got together and decided to do a market day. Now, who would have believed that 30 years later, that 100,000 people come from all over Sydney, in fact, all over Australia, to that festival. And that's Glebe Point Road. You can see that there's, I think there's 250 stalls now, and 50 local businesses take part. It's absolutely a major success story for the area. The Beams Festival in Chippendale is also another major success story. This 14 gallery owners got together and decided they needed to tell a story about Chippendale and the local art galleries. And so they decided to tell their story through art and light. And Beams Festival is actually on tomorrow night if you're in Sydney. And and this year, 30 local residents are actually going to open their homes to light activations as well, and that's quite a phenomenal result. Asia on Your Doorstep is my last example, and the City of Sydney actually runs this program, but it's a really good success story. It again helped to change the conversation about a local area. Chinatown in Sydney is changing. From the traditional Yamcha palaces, we've got a whole pile of new entrepreneurial Korean, Japanese, Thai, Vietnamese, Indonesian, Malaysian restaurants that have come in, and Asia on Your Doorstep aims to tell that story. And this year, 80 businesses will take part, and it will be in its 4th year. And that's Little Hay Street. We closed off Little Hay Street and turned it into Little Eat Street with a whole pile of Asian street food stalls. And it brought in 30,000 people from 4 o'clock in the afternoon through till 11 o'clock at night. 30,000 people crammed into Chinatown. It was amazing. So that's a little bit more about Asia on Your Doorstep. It's actually, what it's really done is actually help to really strengthen our relationships with those Asian communities, and in particular the Thai and Korean business communities, because traditionally the city had actually had a relationship more with the local Chinese community, but now there are other business communities as well. So it's also been the catalyst for the development of some other things like food tours as well, and also the Chinatown Food Lovers Guide, which is in the process of production right now. So that's it. Thank you. So happy to take your questions.